And here we are. Welcome back to Redshirt Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, Matthew and Chris Dawson. What's going on? It is week 13. It's past week 13. We're recapping it. This was a crazy rivalry week. I had a lot of fun watching these games. We had four undefeated teams. The four undefeated teams all were in one possession games. Some low-key
Yeah,
sweats.
yeah. And well, I guess there were five going into the week, and obviously Michigan and Ohio State played each other, and so there's four left. But yeah, and nothing like we've been kind of waiting for the dam to break, and it didn't really break. It almost did. I mean, looking on the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Obviously, if you're new, but Jalen Milroe, man, like he saved it for him. We'll obviously touch that game later, but this week had a lot of chaos potential. Washington State, which we'll get into. You had Georgia messing around with Georgia Tech, the top end. A lot of weird stuff happening, but obviously we all enjoyed it. Like even though the upsets didn't happen, it was still great games, great football, passion. People say that cultural regular season doesn't matter to these teams if you're 5-6 or 7-5, whatever it is. Like these games matter to all these schools, these programs, these fans. It's awesome.
I agree. And look, so what do our recaps entail? So if you're new to this, we preview 8, 9, 10 games. We get to choose 9 games we previewed this week. So we're going to go into detail about those games and some extracurriculars for some of those games, including new coaches, new situations for some of these guys. So we'll definitely be getting into that. We'll also have a whip around, which is everyone's favorite recap segment, where we're going to go into the games that we didn't necessarily preview. We didn't necessarily watch all the games, but what are our reactions, right? What are we looking at for these games? What are the outlooks for these teams? We pick out specific games for that as well. And of course, the recap of our upset meter. How did we do? I think we did pretty good. Again, like you said, there were not a lot of upsets, but we found one. Oh, yes, we did. We found one. So, but yeah, if you're watching on Spotify, thank you for watching or thank you for listening. Be sure to give us a rating, 5 stars if you love the content, and give us a follow. We appreciate all you guys. YouTube and Spotify, we love you guys. If you guys also want to catch us on Twitter, you can follow us at the Redshirt Soft. And look, there's gonna be some crazy coaching stuff going on. You're gonna want to hear our reactions. You're gonna hear everything. You're also gonna get updates on the show when videos are out, when new content is up. Whole bunch of stuff is on Twitter. And if you have a mailbag question, just email us at the redshirtsophomore@gmail.com. So thank you very much. You ready to get into it, CD?
Let's do it.
Our week 13 games, we covered 9 of them. Like we said, uh, we make our picks. Obviously, I was straight up. I was 6-3, picking up winners, and 5-4 ATS, which is pretty good. Which actually puts me on the season 76-31 straight up. That's good enough for 71%. That's pretty good. I would have liked that a little bit higher, but it was pretty good. I thought pretty good. I took some shots and some underdogs for sure throughout the season, and ATS was 5-4, which puts me up to 57-46. Good enough for 55%. And again, we don't have an edge on these games at all. So picking at 55% for the entire season, uh, pat on the back there. Pat on the back there. You, on the other hand, in terms of winners, you were dealing winners left and right 2 times this year. You went 9-0. This week you went 7-2, picking up straight up winners. That puts you at 80-27 on the season. That's a 70. What is that? 75% win percentage? Yep, 75% win percentage on the year. Cash. That's cash right there. And then ATS, you had a big week, 7-2, which put you at 55-48 for 53% ATS. Look, that's a show. We went 73% straight up and went 53% or 54% ATS. I think that's awesome. I think that's hella good. If you were to actually just blindly follow our picks, even if CD and I were picking against each other, right? If you were to, like, let's say for this week, I had Minnesota, he had Wisconsin. Even if you were to take both sides of that for the whole year, you'd be up 8 units, which is pretty wild.
Snaps all
But
around.
snaps all around. But one thing you were not up in, and you know what? This was on me. Dawson's Dynasty was 3-2. Some late ads on Twitter. Michigan -3, Utah -21.5. Two things I did wrong this week. One, I did not wait on the Air Force Boise State line to drop. It went up to 46.5, and then it dropped down all the way to 44.5 before kickoff. And if you took that over there, hopefully you did, you cashed. We pushed at 46. And Utah minus 21.5. I should have stayed away from this. I should have. Saw a post by 24/7 Sports that Shedeur Sanders was going to be out, and I'm like, wow, that looks tasty. I'll take it at 21.5. I think it moved to 23 before kickoff. I just shouldn't have taken that. I should have just ridden off into the sunset. I was going to be 3-1. We were going to be up on the year. Dawson's Diner. It's going to be awesome. Instead, we ended the year down 1 unit with a record of 34-32, which is a bummer. Dawson's Diner's not over yet, though. We got bowl season and we got conference championships. So this is not
Gotta
over.
make the money back somehow.
Gotta make it back somehow. But I will say, you know where the money was at, though, this weekend? It was live betting the Nebraska-Iowa under and Iowa money line. That's where the money was.
That's always a good bet. Always a good bet for you. As soon as the touchdown scores early, a long touchdown, turnover, something happens. It's like that line changed a little bit too much.
Yeah, and I'd just like to point out that Oklahoma State 30-1 that I called out in our preseason Big 12 conference preview. That's looking pretty juicy right now. Got a nice hedge in there for sure. So
this is hedge weekend for all you sharps that did your futures and had fun with them. You know, you got Heisman hedges, you've got obviously conference championship hedges. So have fun with those. You call a long shot. You love it when it comes out.
Absolutely. Any mistakes, like anything you really, really, really regret? I mean, you went 7-2. Well, what is there to not like? You know?
Yeah, the UTSA one, I was expecting a little better performance from the offense of both teams, to be honest, but Frank Harris specifically. And then the UNLV, we just whiffed on it. Like we talked about that. We didn't like it. We knew that San Jose State was going to win, but we had to take UNLV because they were at home, because Barry owned them, and because we thought it was their year, whatever. It turns out they'll still get their chance to beat Boise State, even though San Jose State just beat them and whatever else.
That.
Kind of crazy the tiebreaker, but
the Air Force Boise State one, I still like the pick that I took there. Air Force was a 2-point conversion away from covering. So now would I take them to win straight up again? No. But I liked 7. I liked 7 where we got it.
Taylor Green finally played well. It had been a while, and I did not see that coming. That's not why I took that Boise State, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll say, and then I regret, of course, taking Minnesota. That was an easy regret.
Yeah.
I mean, even with Cody Lindenberg playing and
he looked
Lemay Brockington, I mean, even with him back as well, who we thought was out for the season, just magically shows up on the sidelines.
Played 8 snaps.
Played 8 snaps. We'll get into that game, but that was a mistake for sure. So I would take back Air Force to win straight up, and I would take back Minnesota. UNLV won. We had to do it, right? We had to do it.
Yeah.
So let's get into the whip around. For the whip around this week, we got 10 games that we threw on the whip around. What's the first one we'll talk about? We'll talk about Kentucky-Louisville. This was an awesome game. This is a rivalry game.
For a lot of reasons.
For a lot of reasons. And the intensity around the Kentucky program amplified after this game because of the rumors that Mark Stoops was going to be the head coach of Texas A&M. I was in full belief that the next coach of Texas A&M was going to be Mark Stoops for about an hour and a half, if that. So, this was a good game by Kentucky. Devin Leary, again, had one of those games where he just had a good game, which happened a few times this year. And look, Louisville got caught lacking. So now their playoff chances, as slim as they were before, they are dead. They're still playing in the ACC championship, so they still have a lot to play for. And Jeff Brom, this is a fantastic season for him. 10-2, you will take that every single day of the week as a Louisville fan, Jeff Brom, with this schedule. You hate losing to a rival, but I don't know. Are there any other takeaways from this game?
Yeah, I think that's just what you get with Jeff Brom sometimes, where you don't play perfect football and the other team plays well and you can get caught. I mean, they had a chance to win the football game. They got outscored by 10 points in the fourth quarter and they lost at home to the rival. Now, obviously, 10-2 is still a wildly successful season. And obviously you have a real chance of beating, Tate Rutledge and Florida State next week. But regardless of what happens in that game, even so, 10-3, a top probably 25, 20-ish finish is going to be really successful in year one of Louisville, right? You hit on some transfers. Jamar Thrash, Jack Plummer played well enough to win you a lot of football games. I thought he was fine. He made one bad interception. And obviously they had the 2 fumbles. And so you lose the turnover margin, you some penalties, and like that's how you can lose these games. Like it is what it is. You get to go in the bad with Jeff Brom, but it's also like year one of Louisville. Like eventually he will get enough talent in there where when Kentucky's on their down year, you can beat them at home with your B- game, with your C+ game,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But obviously, yeah, like that Mark Stoops news is wild. I think if you're a Kentucky fan, like Texas A&M was outraged that they had Mark Stoops. To be honest, I thought that was a good hire. I think he's a real good coach. I don't think there's a huge difference between Mark Stoops and Mike Elko, other than familiarity with the program, other than you probably know what you're getting with the person Mike Elko versus the coach in Mark Stoops a little bit more. Obviously, we'll get into that more, but yeah, I just think I think
I
Mark
think
Stoops is
there's
a great
I
hire.
think
But
there's
for
quite a
Kentucky
few
though, Kentucky
differences.
fans, you got to be happy with Mark Stoops. Kentucky, like people talk about fit all the time, and like any coach can fit anywhere if they're winning. But like Mark Stoops is fitting really well at Kentucky. He understands the expectation there. They understand the expectation there. He is giving everything he needs to succeed at the level, at the standard that they want them to succeed, and he's doing it. And you have
I
to be
agree.
happy with that.
I agree.
And
Mark
and
Stoops is a
honestly,
great coach.
I don't know many Kentucky fans that are like upset with Mark Stoops. I get it. Like if you're upset with the O-line performance last, I don't know, 3 years, that's something to think about. But like by and large, Kentucky has been a very relevant program the last 5, 6 years, and that's not been the thing for them.
Yeah, I agree. Mark Stoops is a good coach. So is Jeff Brom. Kentucky got it done today. That was a good top 10 win for them. I mean, top 10. Right? I mean, Louisville is definitely not power rated as a top 10 team, but it was a good win on the road against a rival. You'll take it every time. 7-5
Yeah.
against a top, and with a win against a top 10 team on the road, which, by the way, I guess Texas A&M has not beaten a team on the road in their last 10 games. So Mark Stoops is already doing something a little better than A&M is.
He already did that.
But yeah, this was a good game. I enjoyed it. Next game we'll talk about Alabama Auburn. Holy cow. Did
What?
Peyton Thorne play unbelievably average, which is not normal for these Iron Bowl games when you have Auburn. Normally you have like exceedingly spectacular quarterback play in order for Auburn to win these games in Jordan-Hare. Jalen Monroe, I thought played fine. They played fine.
I mean, he made some boneheaded plays, which he always does. I mean, every game you're going to get 2 to 3. And we talked about this when we were watching the Minnesota game with Haith Kelly McManus, right? Like minimize the boneheaded plays as long as like if the bad pass falls incomplete or something happens, like, and you can like still recover from it, then that's fine. With Milroe, he had a couple plays where like he literally ran across the line of scrimmage and threw the ball at least 2 yards downfield. That cannot happen, right? If you want to beat Georgia, but also like they still got a field goal on that drive, and then secondly, like, well, you saw what happened at the 4th and 31. If you haven't, I encourage you to go check Twitter, check YouTube, and see what the Alabama
It's
Auburn
everywhere.
finish is.
If you're watching this
Yeah,
video, chances are you've already seen it.
exactly. But the thing is, like he made mistakes, but he also was able to recover from it. I thought that's the Peyton Thorne. I thought he played well. I mean, he missed some throws early. He was settling in. He did not have protection in those throws, but when he had time, they schemed up. I mean, Hugh Freeze did an incredible job
Yes.
on
Like,
6 completions. I'm sorry, 6 total, but 5 completions for Peyton Thorne. He maximized all of them.
yeah.
Hugh Freeze did, and I thought this was such a credit to him. They ran the ball effectively, even though Bama knew they were one dimensional. And then, like, I thought Peyton Thorne ran the ball well. He ran the ball physically. I thought he moved bodies when he was running. He wasn't just falling down. He wasn't sliding. Like, he wanted to win that football game. And you leave Auburn and Hugh Freeze, especially Hugh Freeze, in games long enough. At Jordan-Hare, like, weird things can happen. And obviously, Bama ended up surviving, I guess is the right term, or slipping one away from Auburn. But yeah, this was an incredible game, start to finish.
Yeah. I think this is kind of a preview. I think Bama fans are relieved, but I think it's going to start turning quickly into a bit of paranoia because Auburn, look, as they get more talented, those games are going to be losses for sure.
The margins will be thinner.
Hugh Freeze, we know him as the Bama killer. That's what he is.
You hated him at Ole Miss. Now imagine having to play him at Jordan Hare with talented roster.
Yes, and a quarterback that doesn't stink.
Yeah, but who? I mean, Walker White. It's a Walker White. Is it the quarterback for him? That's the guy coming in, the young guy. But
Yeah, they'll find something in the transfer portal, maybe. I don't know.
they try. Peyton Thorne was that. I'm sure Hugh Freeze will find somebody. Regardless, though, like,
Yeah, maybe
does this
Caden
worry?
Salter. I don't know. The old
He's a
Liberty
dog.
guy. He's a dog.
Does this worry you for Bama going to Georgia? Like, do you feel differently about their chances? No, like obviously this is the last 6 games of the year, or prior 6 games leading up to this game. It's been a much different Bama team, right? They've ran the ball. Jalen Rose played really good. Their defense has locked down teams. Does this like scare you at all, or is this like, no, this is Auburn, this is Iron Bowl. Who cares? It's rivalry week. Chalk it up. This will be a brand new Bama team for next week.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, if you remember the last time, like Bama had a sweat at Jordan Air with Bryce Young as their quarterback, needing a last minute drive, going on to win the game against a not great Auburn team.
Yep.
Uh, they ended up blowing out Georgia in the SEC championship. So I don't feel any differently about Alabama. This is again one of those special instances where I know people talk about Ohio State Michigan is the best rivalry in football because of the magnitude of that game, sure, but like this game is different when it's played at Jordan Air. Like it is guaranteed to be a classic when it is played at Jordan Air. We've seen it
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again. It's a
Yeah.
special rivalry.
They haven't won 2 straight at Jordan Hare in a long time. And the thing is like, to me, I feel somewhere in the middle. It's like, yes, you beat Auburn in Jordan Hare. That's a win in itself, right? Like, throw everything else out the window. You got to win against Auburn. You survive in advance. You can breathe now. But the second thing is like, where I kind of get my hesitancy is like, it just reminded me that there are flaws with this Bama team that were exposed
Where
early in
though?
the season. We're talking about penalty wise, right? We've seen that
Yep.
before in big games. We're talking about sustaining drives, right, and finishing in the red zone. And then we're also talking about giving up explosive plays in their in secondary, but also defensively, like in general, right? So that's what concerned me. And like, yes, it didn't bite him against Auburn. The thing is Bama's talented enough and well coached enough to like play an elite game and beat Georgia. Absolutely. At the same time, like if they don't, like Georgia will expose these flaws and then some, and it could get ugly, you know. So that's where it's like they can still beat Georgia, no doubt about that. Same time, it's like, oh yeah, like this is not a flaw. This is a flawed Alabama football team. But by the way, every other team in the country is flawed, right? Like there is no perfect team this year, for the most part. Like, you know,
Yeah, I think Georgia and Michigan's the closest thing we have to that, you know.
well,
But
and when you're getting to this caliber level of teams, like these teams, like you're nitpicking, right? Like when you say flawed, like these flaws are very nitpicky, but they're also the margins of an SEC championship game, an Ohio State Michigan game, a college football playoff game. Like that, those are the margins. That's how you win, you know, in these big games.
yeah, let's talk about BYU Oklahoma State. Mike Gundy classic.
Hey, we
I
do feel
mean,
bad for Katani Sakai.
no, we don't.
Wow, I do. BYU balled out in their first year in the Big 12 without a quarterback for much, like for a couple of those games at the end there. Like they balled out, man. They balled out.
I mean,
They
they
gave
really couldn't.
Oklahoma and Oklahoma State scares. That's the second and third team in the Big 12. They gave them real scares.
I know they picked on the bottom of the Big 12. They were able to get that right, and then they got an out of conference win against Arkansas, which turned out to be not a very good win. So I don't know. I don't look. All I'll say is Mike
You could
Gundy is awesome. Oklahoma State, the preseason 30-1 Oklahoma State conference championship, Big 12 dark horse is still alive for me.
never a doubt, right? Never a doubt.
Never a
I
doubt.
remember I remember begging you to just hedge on BYU. Just begging you. Hey,
Oh
hedge
gosh,
hedge BYU. And as soon as they're up, what was it, 24-6? Or right?
they're
Like,
down 18.
yeah, 24-6 in that first half. And it's like You should have hedged. I told you I was like, we should have hedged. And then never doubt Mike Gundy, man. Never
Then
doubt. That's when you double down. That's exactly when you double
yeah,
down.
then Alan Bowman showing up and showing out, and then Ollie Gordon. I mean, just fourth quarter. Ollie Gordon is the best player in college football. You cannot do anything when you're tired and you're bending over and you're panting. You cannot get a good tackle on this guy. He's
No,
unbelievable. 5 touchdowns in this game, almost 200 rushing yards. He's electric. He had, I think, his career high in carries this game for good reason. The weather wasn't too great there. I cannot believe BYU made that field goal at the end of regular. I thought we were this game went to overtime because Oklahoma State missed an extra point. BYU went down the field and kicked a 52-yard field goal in terrible weather as a college kicker. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. And then Oklahoma State missed the 2-point conversion in the second overtime, and I'm like, oh no. And then, of course, you get a strip fumble, recover it. They reviewed it for like 5 minutes for some reason, so the celebration was short, and then the celebration got long. So Oklahoma State was scoring off against Texas in the Big 12 championship. That's the main reason we want to talk about this game, and it was a great game. So that was awesome. That was awesome. Let's talk about Northwestern Illinois. Let's talk about Northwestern winning 7 games this year.
Coach of
What
the
the
year.
hell? What
Coach
the
of the
hell?
year.
I did not watch this game at all. I'll be candid. Did not watch this game. But box score scouting, John Paddock looked like he was slinging the ball around the yard. Too bad he's out of eligibility. Would have loved to see that guy come back and in an orange jersey next year. But yeah, David Braun. I mean, unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Like again, and you brought this point up to me earlier. It's like, and people are wrong to be pissed at Dion for not making a bowl game. Like people are wrong, right? Like Deion Sanders, it is hard to turn around a team that wins one game at the talent level that they were at and go bowling. That's it. You're asking near impossible, right? And they did as best they could. They started 4-0, and then depth caught up to them. Northwestern was in the same position. They won one game last year. Granted, the Big Ten West is the worst division in Power 5 football, but you won 7 games. You beat Minnesota. You beat Illinois. You almost beat Iowa. You killed UTEP. Like now UTEP's not good, but like the way that they did that, it looked good. So I cannot express how impressed that I am with this Northwestern team. You're looking at a guy who looked at that over under 3.5 wins, and I was like, what are we doing here? Like, you're asking the impossible. And then Pat Fitzgerald, the whole thing happened, which, people are throwing around his name potentially for Duke, but might be a little too soon for that. I don't know. We don't have to talk about that, but just so freaking impressive from David Braun. And it is exactly the right thing to do to go turn around and hire this guy. Because if not, someone else is, aka
So,
Indiana.
yeah. Oh God,
like
yeah. Well, Syracuse. I do think like
Syracuse.
that's not a shot at Dion, by the way. When we say yeah, like that, this is a pro David Braun, right?
Yep.
Yeah, David Braun. This is just showing how impressive what he did actually was. They went 7-5. Ben Bryant, a guy that was kind of pushed out of Cincinnati, and guess what? They lost 4 draft picks, right? They had a first round pick, Peter Skronsky. They had a fourth round pick, Adewema. Wow.
Atabore.
Adebawore.
Is that what it
Adebore.
Atabore?
Yeah, my apologies there. Yep. And then
Cam
like Cam
Mitchell,
Mitchell and Evan Hull, right? Like those are like 4 guys that were impact players on your team.
NFL players.
And
NFL
you turn around
players.
and to the portal, you lose Malik Washington to Virginia, who is literally a monster, who is like ACC leader in fantasy wide receivers.
Number 2 fantasy wide receiver in college fantasy football. If you play college fantasy football, number 2 wide receiver overall, behind only Malik Neighbors. Better than
Yeah,
Marvin Henderson Jr. Now, is he that talented? And did he benefit a lot from volume? Yes, but he's also a good blocker. He does a lot for you. Special teams, like he does a
they
lot
could
for
have
you.
used him on Northwestern, absolutely, and they still went 7-5 with Bryce Kurtz and Cam Johnson. I mean, it was awesome. It was really awesome. I could not have been more happy from Northwestern. Not only did they beat Illinois, not only did they go 7-5, but they also beat Illinois, preventing them from being bowl eligible and letting Minnesota sneak in at 5-7 to the bowl games. That didn't really matter, but regardless,
It did
that's just kind
matter.
of funny. It matters to be. Oh, it matters to us. Absolutely, it matters to those players that get 14 more practices. It matters to the money that Big Ten brings in, specifically Minnesota, and like the fans get another place to go to. We'll probably end up in Detroit, and that kind of sucks. Go from one cold weather town to another.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, enough about Northwestern. As much as I love Northwestern, let's talk about West Virginia. Let's talk about Neil Brown. Let's talk about Garrett Green. Let's talk about Jaheim White. Are you kidding me? Jaheim
another
White. Now, okay, you're a big
that
CJ
was a
Donaldson
crazy
fan.
ending. That was a crazy
It
ending.
was a crazy ending. But I'm gonna spotlight Garrett Green and Jaheim White, and I'm gonna let you talk about the game, right? Jaheim White on the season is averaging like 8 yards a carry. That is stupid. He is a true freshman. He's all 5'7", 192. Dude is a bowling ball. Dude is a bowling ball, but he is explosive. He is a hard runner. He's going to be an crazy. And CJ Donaldson is a very, very good running back, H back, whatever you want to call. He does everything right. He's very, very good. I mean, the dude has like CJ Donaldson on the year has like an absurd amount of touchdowns. I don't know the number from. He's got 11 rushing touchdowns, more receiving touchdowns. James White is a dude, man. It is a dude. It was confirmed in this game. Now Baylor's been pretty tough. And before we get into West Virginia, like in the outcome of this game, you can talk about the game. Baylor, Jeff Grimes has been fired as the offensive coordinator. A guy that was getting looks to be the offensive coordinator at schools like A&M last year. He's out. Dave Aranda has flipped to calling plays now.
Defensively.
Defensively. Sorry. Yep. Thank you for the clarification there. There's no more fingers to point. There's no more fingers to point to. Dave Aranda, I mean, look, if his seat wasn't already hot, right, he still might get fired. I don't know what that administration is going to do. I
Well,
would have thought
so
that it had been already done by now, but
so they did announce that they are bringing him back. That's when the news about, but it was bringing him back, but you got to make wholesale changes. And like the reason why they brought him back is because they had a ton of freshmen playing. They had injuries at quarterback positions, and this season obviously did not go the way they wanted to. But they didn't bend down, didn't fall over. They competed in some games down the stretch in the Big 12, kind of. But the thing is, like, next year will be his year. He's going to make changes offensively with Jeff Grimes, and obviously, defensively, he's calling plays. I do think the future is going to be better in 2024. I don't know how much better and how much better does it have to be to keep his job. But regardless, though, I think he knows and they know like
it's a
2023 is
bowl game.
unacceptable.
It's bowl game or bust for him. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, 6-6 would
Can't be
kind of
losing
be
to
disappointing.
can't be losing to GJ Kin and in Texas State. Can't be doing that.
No. And you had a chance to beat Utah. You had a chance to beat Houston. I mean,
Houston,
you had a chance to
you had a
beat
chance
West
to be West
Virginia. Like
Virginia.
that's the thing is I took their over under this year because they lost some close games last year in 2022, and I was expecting that to change in this year. And obviously, they took a step back and then some. But this is the same coach that took them. This took Baylor, right? This is not University of Texas. This is not right like Oklahoma. This is Baylor. Love Baylor as a program, but they are not like an elite level where they can just reload and replenish. 2 years ago, they were in the Big 12 and they won the Sugar Bowl. Like they were the class of the Big 12 for a season, and they're not that far away removed from that. He can get them back there. Does he have the time to do it though? He didn't just forget how to coach. They just whatever he's been doing is not working. And the transfer portal was part of it. He's figuring that out. And but it's you mentioned though, it's bowl game or bust, and I think even and then some.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Sun Belt. App State winning 55, Georgia Southern 27. App State clinching a spot in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. They will be playing against Troy. That line opened, I believe, at 6.5. Georgia Southern, 4-game skid to end the year after starting 6-2. A team that we thought had they controlled their own destiny. Once then things started to fall off the rails once they played James Madison. They lost that game, came back, won 2 games, but then they kind of got outplayed in every single game by a good margin. Their defense just looked terrible in those games. And App State is the opposite. They started 3-4 on the year, and they end 8-4 with 5 straight wins, including a win against James Madison. So if you think Troy has that game locked up, look now. Troy's been playing great football. Gunnar Watson's playing better football than he has his entire career. Kamani Vidal is also a fantastic player as well. I mean, they got a good squad over there in Troy. Their defense, John Summerall's got the boys buzzing. He might have been a little distracted there when he saw Mark Stoops, you know, get hired at A&M for about 15 minutes. He might have got a little distraction there, but he's locked back in. He's locked back in. So this is I didn't get to watch this game, but good for App State, man. They were on legit. I don't know what you want to call it quit watch, but they were on legit like man like because the expectation of App State, which is crazy, it's like it's bowl game, right? And there was a good chance they were not going to make a bowl game when you were looking at the rest of their schedule when they were three
They
and
had a
four,
tough schedule.
and then they win all of them, and they win all of them.
Yeah, including James Madison. Also, I do want to say Sean Clark. We should know better than that to like just count him out. Like a lot of people did. And Sunbelt was like, okay, if James Madison's bowl eligible, fine. But Coastal Carolina's playing well right now. Well, Dominion, they're kind of sneaky. But it was like Georgia Southern, Georgia State, all these teams ahead of App State. And it's like, who's going to play Troy? And
Yeah,
App State was not one of them. And
Sean Clark is a name to look out for the Duke job. I'd say Syracuse job. I don't know. I think he's a little bit
yeah,
under the
but
radar.
he also just loves App State though. He just loves App State.
He
So like
does.
I don't think I wouldn't be I would be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he left, but I also would not be surprised if he stayed and turned down some, quote unquote better jobs because he loves App State. App State's a good job. The Sun Belt's a good program, a good conference. It's only getting better. And
Yeah, no. Well, it's
especially with the
easier.
coaches in there.
It's easier to make the decision to stay. I mean, Sean Clark is an alum of App State. If you didn't know, as a listener, uh, but look, Jonathan Smith left Oregon State to go to Michigan State. You know, Mike
But
Riley,
different,
Mike Riley did
they're
the same
different
thing at
though.
Oregon State. He didn't go to Oregon State, but he grew up in Corvallis.
It's a little
He's
bit
a guy who
different though.
went to Nebraska. I mean, is it that different though? Like
Well,
you
I,
would be
I think
getting a
like
significantly better job.
I think Jonathan Smith, he kind of had to get it like that when your program, the future of your program is just such in question and so out of your control because of failure of Pac-12 commissioner and all this other stuff, and just like you have no idea what's going on. How can you recruit? How can you do all these things that you should normally be able to do and that you have been able to do at Oregon State, which place that most people haven't been able to do these things. And now it's like, okay, now we got to restart and figure it all out again. And it's like, okay, well, let me just go to where a place where resources are at Michigan State, where the money is, right? And then the ability, the long-term longevity of your program is not a question mark. The Big Ten is here to stay. And the other part, like Pac-12 and Oregon State, who knew?
Yeah, and okay. So for Georgia Southern, their future's still pretty bright, right? Those
Bowl
receivers,
game.
yeah, bowl game. Look, those receivers will be back. They'll be good. I believe. Davis Brin is out of eligibility. He might have one more year. He might have a COVID year. He
Let me check
might.
on that.
I don't know. But if you can get him back, that'd be really nice. Just a little continuity in that offense there.
He'll probably have to
But
apply for a waiver, it looks like, because it'll be technically his,
sixth year. But like
his
his
seventh
first 2 years,
year.
like were those red shirts? I don't even know. I don't even know.
Well, that's why he'll probably have to apply for a waiver.
It'll be his like fifth year, right? I thought. Or did
Well, he
he
started in 2018. And so 2018,
just
2019,
2024 would be his
2020.
sixth year? I don't know. I don't know. Georgia
Oh,
Southern
maybe you're
fans, let
right.
us know. I mean, I don't know. I don't follow Davis Brin close enough to know if this is his last year of eligibility or how his redshirt situation is looking. But
It would be his seventh year, but I think he can still do it.
I mean, you can do anything these days, right? I mean,
Yeah, for real.
so Florida State 24, Florida 15. Max Brown, Billy Napier, man. Just it was it the third straight losing season for Florida? First time in like 70 years. That's pretty brutal. That's pretty brutal. And look, Florida went up. They're up at half. Felt like, oh, maybe this has got a shot, but it just Florida State was a better team. I don't know that Florida did a great job preparing these boys for this game. Max Brown, of course, struggled, which we kind of expected, right? We didn't expect him to necessarily ball out, right? In the swamp, I saw this as a potential spot for Florida to straight up win this game. But
Well, I thought they scripted plays well for Max Brown, and you knew it was going to be hard because you had injuries on the O line, and the D line for Florida State's pretty darn good. Jared Verse had a day. Obviously, you have a backup quarterback. They scripted plays well. They started off strong, and they just could not maintain. And the problem is like there was a legit talent gap, and like I get it, it's year 2 of Billy Napier, but at the same time, like it cannot be easy for Florida fans to be watching this game and be like, there is a talent gap with Florida and Florida State. That has to be frustrating. That has to be frustrating. And I get it. 2024 is the year for them in terms of getting that recruiting class in, another round of transfers, yada, yada, yada.
they have a
But that
tough schedule next year. Tough.
awful. It is awful. They could go 5-7 and upset some really good teams. The problem is you look back in their schedule and like to me, this loss is not why I get upset with Florida. I think you had a real chance to beat Missouri last week, right? Which would have been a huge one. You had a real chance to beat Florida State as well. Huge, like that would be back-to-back top 10 wins, huge wins. Obviously, you don't win them, you're not favored. Fine, whatever. That Arkansas game, as circle. Arkansas has been dead in the water against just about everybody else in the SEC, and they looked competent against you guys at home. They beat you in the swamp, and that can't happen, right? In year 2, you're hoping to see growth. You're hoping to see not the same mistakes happening, dumb penalties, right? Some guy spitting on a Florida State guy, like that can't happen in year 2.
Yeah.
Like there needs to be a progression on the field. I get it, recruiting wise, you're doing a really good job. But Billy Napier is a guy that was supposed to bring in culture, staff, and coaching into this place here, and it just hasn't happened, right? Like it hasn't happened yet. And obviously, I don't want to pull the plug too early on him. I don't want to ever like insinuate someone like has to get fired. And I don't think that's the case here. I do think he needs some more time to get it right here. But at the same time, like at a program like Florida, you have a smaller leash than other programs. We talked about this back in the summer with Jake Dickert and Billy Napier, right? Both second-year guys. Jake Dickert had after a hot start, they finished brutally. They finished 5-7 too. At the same time, like Jake Dicker's not on the hot seat. Jake Dicker's not being, berated by his fans like Billy Napier is. There's a different expectation at Florida than there is at most other schools. Fair or not fair? That's what you signed up for.
Yeah, you signed up for it. I mean, that's what it is. So, I'm sure
And
LSU
he knows
fans,
it too. Like he's been in the SEC. He understands exactly what he has to do, the expectation. Sorry.
yeah, I'm sure LSU fans are uh, laughing right now. It's not over for Billy Napier. I don't think it should be over for Billy Napier, but boy, he is in an absolute pickle if I've ever seen one. This recruiting class is starting to not fall apart, but it's not looking as good as it was a couple weeks ago. And
Getting plucked a little bit.
getting plucked. Might have to do some work in the transfer portal there for sure.
Definitely
And,
gonna have to.
And hold on to those guys. So, but
If you can keep Graham Mertz, you can keep some other players like ETN's a nice piece. Pearsall, I believe he comes back if he wants to. Yeah, there's building blocks here. Obviously, you don't make a bowl game for what I guess.
Yeah,
Not good.
Georgia Tech. Georgia 31, Georgia Tech 23. I mean, this game, Georgia dominated. Like they were in control of this game, right? So don't be fooled by the score. I more so wanted to talk about Georgia Tech than I wanted to talk about Georgia because we know Georgia, they went out there in the playoffs. Yeah, they're a really good team, whatever. Uh, but how do you feel about Brendan Key right now?
Did they look other than Boston College, which that game was unbelievably frustrating? And I guess you'll throw the Bowling Green in there. Fine, whatever. But to me, they never looked like extremely outclassed in any of these games they played in. They play with speed. They play physical. They play hard. Haynes King is kind of frisky. They got Singleton, who I love as a freshman. Dante Smith runs hard. They've got some nice schemes offensively. I do love their zone running. I love their stretch plays outside. I think it's so nice. The one cut and go for Smith. They're a frisky team. They really are. And like to me, like there was one team that I would have bet, like if I had like pick one money line, it would have been Georgia this week. Obviously, for obvious reasons, huge spread, whatever. Georgia's significantly more talented than Georgia Tech. But like Georgia Tech, this does not surprise me that this game was a little bit closer than the spread would have indicated. I know it got close late, but at the same time, like Georgia Tech was in this game in the first half The second and third quarter, middle eight kind of got away from them a little bit, but they fought back, and they're frisky, man. They're frisky. I can't wait for the bowl game. They went 5-3 conference, 5-3.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a half decent ball club. And I'll give you this: the schedule next year, I think they could make a bowl game again. I'm not gonna lie. So they get Florida State in Dublin, Ireland. Let's remember, Florida State. Like as much as we love to talk about Mike Norvell, I'm sure they'll do great in the transfer portal, but they lose a ton this year. They lose a ton this year to the NFL. A ton. So we'll see
Mhm.
how that is. And it's the first game of the season, and it's an international game. You just don't know how those are going to go. Georgia State, VMI. You get Duke at home without Mike Elko. You get Miami uh, at home. You get NC State at home. They lose a lot of seniors on that defense. Then you play at North Carolina without Drake May, Syracuse, Virginia Tech. That's a lot of potential winnable, also losable games. But like 6 wins
It's
not out
not
of the
nothing that's
question.
like it's something that's like, oh, we can't win this game. And with your talent level you have, and I assume it'll only get a little bit better, right? Marginally. It doesn't have to be a huge jump, but I assume it will get better year one to year two. We've talked about this, right? There will be a jump. It's not crazy to think about it. I mean, we saw Virginia Tech right now. Like it's not like insane to think like, hey, this can be a realistic expectation for us to take the same jump in progression that Brent Pry did Virginia Tech, and now it's Brent Key's turn to do with Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Now you also play Georgia Notre Dame as part of your out of conference next year.
But
Georgia
at the
wins. So
same
that's
time, though, like they beat North Carolina, right? They beat Miami somehow.
let's not get ahead of
They
ourselves. All
hung.
right. Let's see how they do in the transfer portal. Let's
Well,
see what kind of
obviously,
hires. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Uh, Iowa, Nebraska. We'll briefly talk about this game because this game was hilarious. Live bet the under. Live bet Iowa money line. It was a lock. This is the most Iowa ending ever. If you didn't watch this game, I'm sorry because this fourth quarter was incredible. Deacon Hill
it
has the
really
ball.
was.
Deacon Hill has the ball. It's tied 10-10. What does Deacon Hill do? He throws a pick. That was basically a punt. And you're like, oh boy, there goes Deacon Hill, Deacon Hilling. But then guess what? How many, what, 2 plays later, 1 play later? Interception. Purdy throws an interception back to Iowa, who basically gained 25 yards from a Deacon Hill interception in the most Iowa way possible. And then they literally just like ran the ball. They didn't even like try to like score or like gain a ton of yards. They just relied on their kicker to make a big time kick, and they did. They had one big run. I think Keegan Johnson had a nice run. Is that his name? Oh, Caleb Johnson. Sorry.
LaShawn Williams actually had the run.
He had the run. Okay. And
Yeah.
then they kicked the field goal. They won the game 13-10. The total was 25 and a half or whatever, or 26 and a half, whatever it was. That's unbelievable that it went under. That's awesome. Iowa going 10-2. They failed to average 250 yards offensively. The most wins that any other program has ever had while having that stat under 250 yards on offense is 4. And Iowa won 10 games.
Oh my god.
That's a record that will never be broken, by the way, unless it's broken next year. But Brian Ferentz is out of there, so.
Oh my god.
But yeah, Nebraska. I mean, you say it all the time. Same shit, different toilet. But I believe in Matt
Yeah.
Rule. This is different.
It is. It's just the leftover shit from
Yeah,
from fucking Scott Frost. That's what it is. And Nebraska, I know it's frustrating. You were 5-3, I do believe, right? You were staring down a bowl game, and you didn't. Michigan State somehow beat you, and Maryland somehow beat you, Wisconsin beat you in OT, and then Iowa as well at the end there. Like it's frustrating, but at the same time, like this does not feel like Scott Frost, Nebraska. This feels like progress has been made. Like they got better as the season went on. I know you didn't
this
finish
is a
strong.
young team too. A young team. True freshman
That
starting at
also
receiver, defensive line, secondary. I mean,
you also had no quarterback. You had no quarterback all year.
Jeff Sims was not the
Like
dude.
like Harburg was your most productive, kind of, but like no,
Yeah,
they'll
there's some
figure it out
decent
there.
quarterbacks in the transfer portal already. I mean, you got Will Rogers,
Max
you got
Max
Max
Johnson.
Johnson. So I mean, I don't know where any of those guys are going to end up, but I would imagine that Nebraska dips their toe in the transfer portal market for that.
Well, and
Uh,
that's a good spot to be at. That's a good spot for a transfer quarterback to come into with the young wide receivers, with Matt Rule in there. Like
yeah,
you got some talent
Jose
there. They got a
English
nice O
three.
line. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Egg Bowl. This was just 3-0 at halftime. Classic. Uh, I do love that Lane Kiffin post game brought up. Now, look, on record, I'm not the biggest Lane Kiffin fan. All right. But I love the fact that he brought up Mike Leach. You know, he missed seeing Mike Leach on the other sidelines. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was awesome. Uh, in general, Ole Miss did dominate this game, though. Mississippi State had no chance of moving the football, even against a terrible Ole Miss defense. And they win this game. They finished the season 10-2, once again, overachieving with Lane Kiffin. Mississippi State falls uh, ineligible of a bowl game at 5-7. Zach Arnett is out. And it looks like Jeff Lebby is the hire for Mississippi State. And we can get more in depth than that, as we start actually like reviewing, the coaching carousel, giving grades and all that good stuff. But you see the tweet that Lane Kiffin sent out or whatever is like uh back to the sip or whatever. So I think Lane Kiffin, I think he's
There's
good
some
buddies with
beef
Jeff
there.
Levy. There's some beef.
I do not think they're really good friends from what I have
Mm,
heard. I even though they were on the same staff, right? Levy was
no.
at Ole Miss before he was at Oklahoma, um, which is really interesting there. But I don't think they got along super well. I mean, Ole Miss loves to troll, so that's
I
part
think
of
Lane
it. But
Kiffin it sounded like a friendly kind of like jab, like, oh, hey, we're rivals now. Well, I'll see you on the field, in the Egg Bowl. So
yeah, I hope so. But regardless, that's going to be a great and entertaining Egg Bowl no matter what. But I think this is what Mississippi State needed, right? Like Arnett, obviously not the guy, and I think we've seen it, right? The 80s know it. The path to success for Mississippi State is a creative offense. Dan Mullen had it, right? They had a lot of success there.
Mike
Too
Leach
much
had it.
success there. Then most people know we had Mike Leach, obviously had it. And I think Levy, it remains to be seen how he can run a program, but I have no doubt that he's going to be able to have a successful offense and bring in some quarterbacks, some wide receivers, and really spark that offense. And maybe it carries over to the rest of the team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of staff he brings around. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I do believe that this is probably, I'll call it a right hire because I think there are a bunch of right hires. Like there's no like soulmate. I think for Mississippi State with the state of the program where it's at. You could say a guy like Jamie Chadwell would be perfect. You could say a guy like Sean Lewis would be good. Now, granted, he doesn't have a ton of ties to the Southeast or that program, but I'm just, a little veer and shoot, never hurt anyone. I'm just saying like creative offenses, but I, I think this is a hire that people are not surprised by. It was a
This
name
makes
that kind of came up in my brain, but it wasn't like on my top tier list in terms of like looking at who Mississippi State was going to hire. But I'm not surprised in hindsight. Not
it's a
surprised.
very realistic, good hire for them. Now, will it work out? Who knows? But I think it's a really
I
good
have no clue.
dart to throw. Like,
Exactly.
and it's also like the program. The reality of Mississippi State is it is a bottom four program in the SEC that is getting bigger and better, right? With Texas and Oklahoma, so you're just adding more losses to your record.
Yeah. And look, an Ole Miss is a bottom five team in the SEC. But you can see the success if you do get the right hire and you have a creative play caller, have a creative offensive mind. And look, hopefully Jeff Lebby can recruit some lads to the SIP, you know.
I will
So
say to that end, though, I will say that there is a big gap between 4 and 5. I think Ole Miss is a significantly better job than Mississippi State. But at the same time, like you look at Mississippi State's schedule for 2024, right? You've got some out of conference games that you feel pretty good about. You go into Arizona State. Who knows about, let's say, that program, how it's going to
that's
be.
a
I like
scary
Ken Dillingham.
game.
Who knows, though? For sure. right? I love how they hosted Arizona this year. Now they're going back to Arizona State. Toledo, they're kind of frisky, especially if they're very frisky MAC team.
Daquan
And then you
Finn,
got
I'm pretty sure
Illinois,
he has eligibility left. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll
Penny
stay. Penny
Boone.
Boone, if he doesn't transfer out of there, they got some boys there.
But you're looking at your schedule. Like you don't get Kentucky, you don't get Vanderbilt. You have to play at Georgia, you get Arkansas. Okay, you get Florida. You got Missouri, A&M, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas. Like I don't. The problem with Mississippi State is you win your out conference games, you win maybe one, you win one game for sure you feel good about in the SEC, and you've got to get that second win and make a bowl game. That's a successful season for Mississippi State.
I agree. I agree. Thank you guys for tuning to like our whip around portion. If you're listening to Spotify, just a reminder, please give us a rating. Give us a little rating. If you're on YouTube, if you like the video, like the content, just like the video, you know. Maybe throw us a subscription. We appreciate you guys, and let us know if we missed any games, or if look, there won't be a whip around for next week, but for next year, there's gonna be plenty of whip arounds, right? So make sure you guys get ahead in time. Let us know what games you want us to cover on the whip around for that as well. But we thank you guys. Let's get into games we previewed. Ohio State at Michigan. Michigan was favored by 3.5. This was a great game. This was there wasn't the fireworks that you thought it was going to be, but there was 54 points scored in this game. There were turnovers. There were a couple big plays. This was a game of margins. I thought Sharon Moore called a masterful game. I thought he called a masterful game. 3 for 3 on fourth downs. Now, granted, there were 4th and 1s, but he was not afraid to punt, or he's not afraid to go for them. And then also, well, one, he iced Ohio State's kicker, which was awesome. I don't know. I've seen the statistics on that and like how it doesn't work in the NFL. It has to work in college. There were like literally
It's so
two. There were two on Saturday that I remember where people got iced. So I'll believe in the icing at the college level, and then also not calling a timeout on that 4th and 2, like when Ohio State was going to kick the field goal. He could have called a timeout and saved like 50 seconds or whatever. But I think if he called a timeout there, I think Ohio State would have probably gone for it. I think, you know, because then Ryan Day,
yeah.
it's like, okay, either we miss this field goal, right? And I don't know. I think that there was a chance that he could have gone for it in that situation, give him the time on the clock. And if you miss the field goal, then you're giving Michigan the ball right there. You know, it'd be the same thing as going for it on 4th down and not getting it. You know, it's like, which one do you have a better chance of getting? Converting a 4th and 2 or kicking a 50 something yard field goal, you know? So I don't know. But I thought that was
I
crazy.
also shout out the Donovan Edwards pass, right? The little trick play for him, got him 34 yards when they needed it.
Yeah. Speaking of passing, Michigan only threw the ball 21 times because that's all they needed. So I know that Ohio State tied the game up right there in the fourth quarter at like 17, or third quarter. I think they tied at 17.
Mm.
But or maybe 24. A little fuzzy right now, but I thought Michigan kind of controlled the game in terms of like they held on to the ball pretty good, and defensively they made Kyle McCord make plays. So I don't know. I think this was just a great game by Michigan. You know, Will Johnson made a great play on that interception. I don't know. Oh, it was a Kyle McCord bad throw? Yeah, maybe it was a bad throw, but Will Johnson made a good play, right? And then
Hit the
of
drive on
course,
that ball for sure.
yeah, and McCarthy was unbelievable this game. I know he only threw the ball 20 times. I thought he was unbelievable.
That's hard to do too, because when you go long periods of times without throwing a pass, it's hard to get in rhythm, right? Talk to quarterbacks, like it's hard to get in rhythm with that. And so when you have throws, it's going to be on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. You have to make those throws, and you have to be perfect on them. And he was good. You fed him in tight windows. Colson Loveland, I love the tight ends. We saw Ohio State get exposed a little bit right down the middle of the field at times this season, and they did that. They saw it on film. They attacked that very well. I like the Alex Orji, right? Like that little wrinkle in there in the second half. Like it was, I thought Michigan played a really good game. They responded when they had to. As soon as Ohio State had any momentum, boom, right away Michigan. Zach Zinter goes down. I hope he's all right. Obviously, it's a pretty serious injury. Hope for a speedy and full recovery for him. Boom. Next play, Blake Corum. Touchdown, crowd erupts, place goes crazy. That's the kind of thing that elite teams do, right? And like Michigan just responded. And like Ohio State, like they went into on the road to their rival against a team that is as comparable as them. Like these were two really good teams, and they lost. The people's going crazy about Ryan Day. They're throwing out the record against Michigan. They're throwing out the record against all this other stuff. People forget Jim Harbaugh. Like obviously, you're comparing two different things. When he got over to Michigan, it was a different program than Ohio State was when Ryan Day got it. But like, it took Jim Harbaugh a while to get over the Ohio State hump, and like
Like
that's what
a
happens.
while.
And no offense, like Urban Meyer's like flaunting about his like undefeated record. Michigan was a bad program. Like Brady Hook, Michigan. You cannot be like flaunting that. Like this is an elite program right now. This is a top 5 program. Both these programs are in the country. They're playing really, really good. Coaching, talent, scheme, all of that. And they lost. Right? Like Michigan was better in the margins. You had 2 interceptions for Kyle McCord, and both of them were costly. Obviously, the last one I don't really blame him for. He was trying to make a play. He got a hit. Whatever. That happens. That first one's tough though. The first
Yeah.
one's tough.
And you have to remember, like, also too, you got to cut like some of these quarterbacks in that COVID class, like some slack, like these coaches that are trying to evaluate kids based on their junior season. Right? A lot of these kids didn't have a senior season or it was cut short. It's tough to make an evaluation, and you miss on Kyle McCord a little bit there, and that's tough. Yeah, the Ryan Day,
Yeah.
we're not even going to entertain that. He's not going to get fired. He should not get fired. That's ridiculous. We're not even going to. If you want to argue with us about in the comments, you're arguing to a wall. All right. There's nothing you can say that would change our minds. All right. He's a good coach. Jim Harbaugh was 0-5 against Ohio State to start his career. He's 0-5.
Yeah.
So, I mean, say what you
And
want
it's not
about
like
Ryan Day. Just know that if you're saying negative things about Ryan Day, you're wrong.
also like you wanted him to fix his physicality, and Ohio State kind of went toe to toe with them, especially on the interior of the line of scrimmage. Right? Like they ran the ball well. They stopped the interior run. They held them the running backs to 3.5 yards per carry.
Yeah, 2 years ago it was like Ryan Day can't hire a defensive coordinator. He hires Jim Knowles, gets it right. Jim Knowles is a great defensive coordinator. They do well in their recruiting classes there. And now it's
He
like, even
whiffed
though
on a
he's
quarterback.
yeah, and Ryan Day, by the way, this season has had moments of absolute brilliance in terms of offensive play calling. He has had those moments. He's still a good play
Oh,
caller. He's
I
still
thought
a
what
good
he
offensive mind.
I thought he actually schemed up some really nice plays in this game. I think Michigan's defense is elite, and he's handicapped with the quarterback that he obviously doesn't trust to make big time throws, and he has to scheme up plays against an elite defense. I thought he did a tremendous job. I don't know your short term answer. Your long term answer is probably Aaron Nolan, but your short term answer, who knows what's going to be there? Is Kyle McCord going to take another step? What's going to happen? I don't think the transfer quarterback caliber is out there for Ohio State to be had. I don't think Will Rogers comes in and makes a huge difference than Kyle McCord does. But yeah, I don't know. I think it sucks though. This defense, Ohio State finally got the defense right. Finally got it right. This is an elite defense. But no, also at the same time, like as long as Jim Knowles is there and they recruit the way they do, I trust them to have a good defense year in, year out. So like Ohio State will get over the hump eventually. Michigan's just humming right now as a program. They are humming and they can beat anybody in the country.
Let's talk Pac-12. The last Civil War for the time being. Oregon State at Oregon. Oregon was favored by 13.5. We were both in Oregon 13.5. That cashed. They dominated. Let me give you a drive recap here too. Also, bottom line, Oregon is very good. Right? Oregon drives. They had an 8-minute touchdown drive, a 3-minute touchdown drive. Then they had a 6-minute drive where they missed a field goal. They scored a touchdown in 50 seconds. That drive was insanely impressive. That ended in a Troy Franklin touchdown with a great throw by Bo Nix across his body. And then they
That
kicked the
was in
field goal.
response, real quick. That was in response to a touchdown for Oregon State with
Mm-hmm.
about a minute to go, less than a minute to go, and the end of the first half to cut it to 7.
Mm-hmm. And
Elite.
then right out of half, they went down, kicked the field goal, and then they scored another touchdown. And then the thing is, though, is like I don't think like Oregon only scored 10 points in the second half, but they didn't throttle down. Like Oregon State, their drives took a while, right? Because I mean, Oregon State was operating under 4 downs, right? The, the last two possessions right that Oregon had, uh, that last possession before they took a knee, they threw the ball 3 straight times with like 4 minutes left, up 24. They're trying to get the style points there. I think they know that they need to get the style points here, and they were trying to do that. And I think they did a good job of doing that, right? They didn't need to add it on. Like this game was dominating. DJU,
That and Bo Nix too. What's his
yeah,
Heisman?
yeah. Damian Martinez, uh, shut down for the most part. So I mean, this was a heck of a game by Oregon. This is an absolutely fantastic team that I think personally, based on eye test, not necessarily resume right now, looks good enough to be in the college football playoffs and compete.
And if they show up, it's going to be a real debate, and we'll get into that when we get there. Obviously, in conference championship week, certain scenarios, what happens if who wins? But you mentioned it. Oregon has just looked like on another class than everybody else in the Pac-12, besides Washington. Same time, like Washington's also kind of trending down since that game. Oregon's a pretty hefty favorite. I think it's about 9. It opened at 9, which is pretty insane considering the same team that they lost to, just a couple months ago. But yeah, they're looking so good. DJU, I thought played fine. Like there was just a different
They
caliber
couldn't run the ball.
athlete.
They couldn't run the ball,
Yeah.
which is crazy for that offensive line. Which if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
if you're opposing teams right now, you're really nerd. Like I don't think you want to see Oregon in this playoffs.
Mm-mm. You see, Mateo got a sack on his brother.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was
It
pretty
is,
awesome.
but yeah. To me, the takeaway here is Oregon's a damn good team, and they did what they had to do. Where
Yep.
everyone else struggled, other than Texas. Texas obviously pissed out of Texas Tech. Everyone else struggled. Georgia, right? Bama didn't look great. Washington didn't look great. Like you dominated. You did your thing against a pretty darn good Oregon State team. Now I do think yeah, there's yeah. I'll say. I mean, you were favored by 2 touchdowns. Like you're supposed to win. You're supposed to look like this, but not to this level, right? Like this
Yep.
was really impressive. And it wasn't even the
Yep.
run game either. Like it was just Bo Nix chucking it deep. And that secondary I know has been exposed a couple times. So you that was the right, obviously it worked out there. But
You're an Oregon State fan. This was an all-time terrible weekend. Of course, Jonathan Smith goes to MSU
oh,
to take that job, not unlike Mike Riley did those years ago when he went to Nebraska. After both those guys just winning football at Oregon State, which is not necessarily common, right? And those are like either a hometown guy, Mike Riley, who's a grew up in Corvallis, or Jonathan Smith, who went to OSU. The weird thing is like the splash hire, the Gary Anderson, the hiring between those two was the guy that didn't work out. So it's really tough to figure out where you want to go because this is a very vulnerable spot that Oregon State's in, not in the conference,
you need to hit this higher. This is
needing to get this
they
high
know
right.
it. They know it. They have to hit this higher.
Yeah, I mean Jonathan Smith and Mike Riley are two of the winningest coaches all time at Oregon State. Well, I'm pretty sure Jonathan Smith left with a losing record, but the state of the program that he left it in is better than majority of the coaches. I think Mike Riley's the all-time winningest coach at Oregon State. But Scott Barnes, the AD over at Oregon State, the guy, which by the way, he did hire Jonathan Smith, and he was the guy who fired Gary Anderson. And also, if you're forgetting, Gary Anderson was at Utah State, or sorry, yeah, Gary Anderson was at Utah State when Scott Barnes was at Utah State, so they knew each other very well. So Scott Barnes did the thing that he had to do to put the program in the position to win. You know, so I think Oregon State fans trust Scott Barnes. I really think they do. Let's hope he gets it right, man. I really hope. I love when Oregon State's playing good football, but it just sucks right now. It really just does suck.
Is this about this? This is a better job than Boise State, right? It it
Yes,
is. Okay.
yes.
Then
I
yeah.
think
Then
your quality of life in Corvallis is very high.
And the expectation, no, yet like it is hard to win there, but there's talent there right now.
Well, now it's not
And
hard to win there because you're in the Mountain West
but
with
like,
more resources.
yeah, that's true. That's
So
true.
I think it's underratedly a pretty decent job. I would imagine that they hire someone with West Coast ties. Hopefully, like maybe like someone who's an Oregon State alum. I don't have any names on mind. We'll be talking that more. Uh, Potential hires. I'm sure they'll take their time with it, but they'll be
The
thorough.
thing
They'll
is,
be thorough.
if you're Oregon State here though for the season, I know 8-4 is a tremendous success considering that the last decade has been Beaver football, but like you had three, tough losses that were a field goal or less, and that could have been this could have been a special season. And now you're 8-4 and your coach is gone. It's got to be frustrating. I feel for you. We've rooting for you all year long. We are big Beaver fans here, hoping that everything works out for you. We'll see though. I think it's gonna get worse before it gets better. But it will get better. It will.
Let's talk the Aggies. Let's talk Texas A&M at LSU. Spurs minus 11.5. Just kind of balance between 13, 11.5. It really depended where you got that number at. We both
And
took
we got it at
LSU
11.5.
and we
Yeah,
got it
we
at 11
did.
and a half.
Yeah,
And
we did.
we took LSU minus 12. Of course, as an A&M fan, I was impressed with the way that the team played and the way that they rallied behind Elijah Robinson. I thought early in the game, they did some a real nice job shutting down Jalen Daniels. And then all of a sudden he started using his legs. And then you started having to use a spy. And then you didn't have an extra guy in coverage. And then all of a sudden, well, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Lacey just
Get those
shredded our corners,
catches.
which is what we anticipated. I thought Jalen Henderson played a fine game. I thought Bobby Petrino was in his bag that first half, that second quarter. He was in even that first quarter when they were driving that penalty. He was in his bag. So I thought he did a great job calling that game. Uh, it just it's unfortunate. Some injuries caught up to you. And well, the news broke today. It's not Mark Stoops. It's not Mark Stoops. It is Mike Elko. That's going to be the next coach at Texas A&M. And I think it's a great hire. We'll talk more about that. But I'm more happy with Mike Elko than I am with Mark Stoops as a Texas A&M fan. An outsider's perspective, they're not going to have that perspective. I think people look at that as an equivalent hire. But look, I mean, in the comments, let me know what you think. I mean, I would assume that people think in general Mark Stoops is a better hire. I would disagree with that personally. And I know Christopher thinks that Mark Stoops is a really good coach. I do too. And it probably would have been a decent hire, but I'm happy with where we're at. Just got to keep those guys locked in. What transfer portal opens in like December 4th officially. So you got about a week, Mike Elko, to win the team over, which I think is part of the reason why he was brought in.
I,
So
I don't think he's gonna have a hard problem with that. I think he keeps Elijah Robinson on staff. Hopefully, that's obviously best case scenario. He's got to nail the offense coordinator position, and I think that's going to be a pretty attractive spot, right? Bobby Petrino obviously will be a candidate. Kevin Johns over from Duke obviously had a lot of success there with Riley Leonard. He can bring over
yep.
some guys there from Duke if he can convince them to get rid of a trade a Duke degree. But an AM degree is also very, very good. Yeah, I think this is just to me. I was impressed. We'll talk about the game first. Like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, the effort rallying behind Robinson, scheming up things for Henderson. He made plays with his legs. He extended plays. Obviously, he looked like an inexperienced guy at times. This is not the best LSU defense in the world. But you were on the road playing your rival, and you were playing right. This should be a Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels, and you went toe to toe with
Yeah.
them for a while.
We'll talk. We'll bring that up again. Thank you for bringing that up. But keep going.
Yeah, the fourth quarter got away from you a little bit, but it was also just like the attrition of your secondary just got to you. Got to you. And like there's only so much you can do in a 4-quarter game if you're Bobby Petrino to just scheme up points. It's hard to do that for 4 quarters. And it was tough. Jade Walker at times looked nice. Max Wright, I mean, he had a touchdown, but he dropped some key passes. It was tough to see that. And Smith did his thing. Evan Stewart, obviously, yeah, you missed him, but also you have some talent there on the back end. A little disappointed in Bryce Anderson. I thought he missed some tackles. think he's trying to do a little bit too much for that defense and that secondary. And I don't blame him, but at the same time, it's frustrating when you have a guy in front of the sticks to make a tackle and you don't make it. And obviously, getting off the field against a team like LSU and Jaden Daniels is just the utmost importance on third down. And it's hard, easier said than done for sure, but it is what it is. The same problems that you've seen, at least on the field, with these players and vulnerabilities, like they were there for the reason, right? You weren't just gonna fire Jimbo and these things just magically be fixed. Now give Mike Elko an offseason, give this staff an offseason to get him in, get some turnover out there, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, I also want to say Harold Perkins was incredibly impressive. Just like his feel for the game,
As always.
doing his thing. Yeah, he's like, I thought they have a nice scheme for him. It was a Matt House, right? That rush, but also like Henderson's gonna take off. And when he does, you better be there for him. And he had some plays to extend drives, and Perkins got him by a shoestring. And that's the difference in a ball game where you have a chance to get Jaden Daniels on the ground. And I get that's way easier said than done. But you don't do it, and he scampers for 49 yards, and boom, they're two plays they're in the end zone.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels should win the Heisman. Leads the country in total yards, total touchdowns, QBR. He has 90 plays of over 20 yards, legs and arm, right? And don't catch me with this. Oh, he has elite receivers around him. Yeah, he does have elite receivers around him, but he's putting the money, like the ball on the money, downfield. We talked about it. One thing we need to see him improve this year is his deep ball, and it has been there immaculately. Yeah, sure, he missed one in this game. Let's be nitpicky. Blah.
He got rocked on it too, didn't he?
Got rocked. Well, actually, he missed. Walton Nolan. That was Walton Nolan got a holding penalty
Oh,
on that
that
one.
was the hole. That's my bad.
So
That's
it was
that's
off his
another play he got rocked
it
on.
was off
Yeah.
his back foot, right? But uh, he's been absolutely incredible. Like no one is doing what he is doing, and it's not even close. I know Bo Nix has had a really really good season. Sure, he could win a national championship. That'd be awesome. Bo Nix could be a first round quarterback. That's awesome. But the best player in college football, the most valuable player to their team, is Jaden Daniels. It is not even close. So that is my speech on Jaden Daniels. But I will talk about Mike Elko one more time real quickly before we move on. With Elko as their defensive coordinator, Texas A&M was 34-14. Without him as his defensive coordinator, they were 12-12. And a lot of those games were lost because they gave up points. Some of it was on the offense, but there were games where you let teams run the ball, you let teams throw the ball. Not great. And Mike Elko has had a top 25 defense with Bowling Green, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Duke. He's done it everywhere he has been. So people who are like, oh, he's just part of the Jimbo Fisher tree. He is not a part of the Jimbo Fisher tree. He was the one singular hire that Jimbo got right on his staff.
Yeah, and he got out of there and he had immediate success elsewhere and immediate downfall happened at A&M. And I
Yeah.
think people in
Jimbo
the house
Fisher,
know that. If you're there in the athletic department, in the football complex, around the program, like you understand exactly how much Mike Elko meant to that team. And a lot of the times where the problems started occurring, you saw it was, oh wait, Mike Elko's gone. Like that kind of lined up with that. And like, yeah, I you mentioned I like Mark Stoops. I do think this is a better hire than Mark Stoops, but wouldn't have the outrage that Mark Stoops had. Thought this should have been the pick in the first place over him, right? Like I think he's really good. I think he can do some
yeah,
things there. Hold the
yeah.
program together. The problem is like there are certain things at A&M that you have to deal with that you didn't have to deal with at Duke. Boosters, fan
But he
expectations.
knows
He
exactly what
knows it.
those are.
And so what gives me confidence is like he took this job knowing exactly what needs to be done right off the field. Right. And he's gonna have his ducks in line. Kevin Sumlin, Jimbo Fisher didn't have everything in order in their lives, right? For the past 12 years of A&M football, 10 years of A&M football. So like I think Mike Elko's an adult. He's a professional guy. He has the stuff in line. I think he can really succeed at A&M. Now, is the ceiling a national championship? I don't know, but I think the floor is significantly higher than it has been in many, many years.
Let's talk UNC at NC State. Let's talk about just wasting talent at the quarterback position, time after time with Mac Brown's North Carolina. Robert and I putting up 500 total yards with Brennan Armstrong at quarterback. Now, where was this at the beginning of the season? I have no idea. But you know what I love? The progression of Robert and I through the season, right? Realizing he has a special talent in Casey Concepcion, right? He's having him in Wildcat, in the backfield at running back, on all kinds of crazy routes, utilizing Brendan Armstrong's legs, getting that offensive line to move, Brendan Armstrong to move the pocket. I love it. I loved, and again, Robert and I is one of my favorite offensive coordinators. And of course, we had our doubts at the beginning of the year, but NC State won a tear at the end of the year. And, if they'd won that Louisville game like they should have, all way back when on that Thursday night, Friday night, whenever that was, 10-3, we would be talking about NC State playing Florida State. And I think NC State would have a legit chance to beat that Florida State team without Jordan Travis.
And by the way, MJ Morris could play in that game because his redshirt wouldn't count.
Yeah,
But also, like
exactly.
Brennan Armstrong, this is the Brennan Armstrong you've been looking for. And I get it. It's Gene Chizik, North Carolina. I get it.
He was
Right.
good
Like
last
everyone
week.
gets right against him. But yeah. And I think what you mentioned, like being creative and understanding, like this is not, there's some limitations here at times. And like they did a really good job of scheming and being creative and like using your playmakers. Brendan Armstrong's legs, Kevin Conception's legs and hands, right? You got some weird running back issues right now. You got some weird wide receiver issues, weird quarterback issues. You've battled through all that adversity and finished the season uber strong against some pretty good teams. You had Clemson, Miami, Virginia Tech, who's playing well, and then North Carolina. Right? Like those are solid wins in the ACC. And you're 9-3. That is incredibly impressive for Dave Doran.
Yeah, 100%. And I thought, Dave Doran consistently is underappreciated at his job. He is a great coach. He wins games. Uh, and it's not an easy program to win at either. It's not like a guaranteed program that should be winning, right? Dave Doran mentioned it. He's trying to like I think he said something about 5,000 fans donating $1,000, something like that, just to pool enough money together, basically to keep his players. Like if you don't think like there's tampering going on with Casey Concepcion and how well he has played, like there are people on the phone with family members of his that are like, hey, like, oh, this school is interested, by the way. If you enter the transfer portal, you might get a call from them. I mean, the MJ Morris, right? He redshirt. We still know if he's transferring. I happen to think he's not. I think they believe that he's a
I
guy
think
there
he'll be
who's pretty
back.
talented. Yeah, so I think he just generally took a red shirt because he wanted to take a red shirt, and I think that was the plan originally, right? But it's a tough program to win. They gotta rally some money, and good luck to UNC without Drake May and Sam Al. Now I will say this: Connor Harrell, I think he's pretty talented. We might have a situation where we have another very talented quarterback at UNC. We'll see how many
Get
games.
him
I
out
mean,
of
we're talking
there.
about, yeah, he won state championship in Alabama a couple years. I think he had 70% completion percentage and like school records for yards and touchdowns. He's a big boy with a good arm. Dual threat. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see. It seems like they keep finding these gems here at North Carolina. But good
Yeah.
luck
I,
if you can't win 9 games at North Carolina with Drake May. Good luck doing it without him.
I do think we'll see if they make changes on the defensive side of the ball. They've made changes, but like they really haven't, and they have not worked out um to the best of their abilities for sure. Some improvement was made this year, not enough, obviously. The Virginia loss, the Georgia Tech loss come to mind. 2 games you can't really lose. And when you get a pretty darn good schedule, especially on a year where Clemson is down and you're playing Duke's backup quarterback, you had a real chance of making it to the ACC championship game this year, and it didn't happen. Right? Obviously, you were there last year, whatever, but it's a frustrating, again, like second half of the year collapse from North Carolina and Mac Brown. I do think, I don't know, you mentioned it, like no Drake Mays, you're gonna miss him, but there's pieces there. I do think like there's something to be said about, oh, like we don't have Drake May, we can't just have him bail us out. We have to spend off season and just fix our defense or try do, and like work on a running game, get no line, make sure everything around there, around the quarterback is there. So when we do insert Connor Harrell or whoever it's going to be, they're in a spot to succeed. Whereas everything was like, okay, Drake May's in. Now everyone try to figure out what they can do. And like, it's hard. It's hard. And Drake May's going to have a great career in the NFL probably. But it's a shame. Again, like, it's tough to go from Sam Howell to him. Was Mitch Trubisky before Sam Howell?
He
There
might
was
have been.
someone in
Sam Howell.
between.
Sam Howell was a freshman when he started playing.
Yeah. And then
It might
it's
have
been
been.
two
It might
years
have
of
been.
Drake May.
Yeah, it might have
There's
been. It's 3 years of
and
Sam
now
Howell. It
no
might have
Sam Howell
been.
came back for his senior year, I believe, right?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Don't have the things. I can't remember a quarterback in between them, but might have
Let us
been.
know in the comments there, North Carolina fans,
Yeah.
because that'd be crazy run. And like there has not been a ton of success to show for it. I get it. Like it's not an elite program in the ACC. It's not at the top, the tier one programs. Not Florida State. It's not Miami. It's not Clemson. But everything's there for you to win. Especially like it's not gonna get any easier with Miami getting better, with Clemson maybe getting back on track, with Florida State humming, like Jeff Brom and Louisville, Dave Dorn and NC State, Virginia Tech's getting their act together, Georgia Tech's getting their act together. Like the time was the past 2 years, and it didn't happen. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it didn't happen.
Talk Wisconsin at Minnesota. Paul Bunyan's axe returning to Madison. I'll let you take it away.
I mean, this was the least surprising result in game that was of the weekend, right? Like the our I say our as Minnesota as I am current student at Minnesota. Like it was bad. We hit some flaws in the first half. We did some nice things on the ground or the air with Daniel Jackson. Obviously, he had a monster game again. That
Dog.
guy's a gift. Minnesota. Do you remember Rashad Bateman? Like that is Daniel Jackson. Like he won't be a first round pick, but he is that kind of guy where he's a legit wide receiver one on your team, and there's nobody else there giving him any help. And that includes the O line, that includes the coordinator. I don't think there needs to be changes made, but at the coordinator level. But I do think like offensive philosophy, like you have to consider doing something else in the new Big Ten, where again you were down to your fifth, sixth string running back because you had injuries. And when you build your team all offseason around the running game at a position that gets hurt pretty darn easily, like you have to have some kind of balance. I get it, Ethan was young. I get it, his mechanics are terrible. But at some point, it's like, figure it out, you know? Same time, this Wisconsin team, I mean, was not very impressive at all. Like, Tanner Mordecai used his legs nicely. I thought that was good. Braylon Allen ran the ball well against a beat up Minnesota team. At one point, there was like 4 true freshmen playing. And for most schools, that's for some schools in the Big Ten, fine, whatever. Like, that's typical. At Minnesota, that is not the case. That is not a good sign for Minnesota. They do not have guys that can just walk on and play Big Ten football, especially in November. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Wisconsin, it was good. Good
Cody
for you guys to get a
Lindenberg.
win. It
But
was terrible.
when you saw warming up, you were like, wow, like that is a huge addition at linebacker. Huge addition because the linebacker room has just been terrible this year and injured and beat up and all the above. And he did not play very well.
He played terribly. That was probably his worst game as a gopher in the game where we needed him to play and step up. Him and Dev Williams looked awful. And when you play Wisconsin, right, especially when Braylon Allen has 26 carries and your 2 middle linebackers play their worst games of the year, you're gonna lose. You're gonna give up 6 yards a carry. That's just gonna happen. Regardless, though, like the future, there will be better times in Minnesota. I mean, there will be better teams. I don't know about better times. The teams will be better. You'll only really lose, one offensive lineman, Brevin Spanford, a slot receiver, and then Kyler Ball off the middle, who's obviously a real good player. And then Tyler Nubin's a big impact loss. We made fun of him because he had a rough November for sure. But he is a special player. He'll be a good player in the NFL.
He
At times
his
tries to do too
interception,
much.
his interception at halftime was the
All
record
time leader.
breaking
Oh
all time
yeah.
leader
He
Minnesota
had a
history
hell of
for
a career.
interceptions.
A hell of a career. And it didn't end how he wanted it to, but he had a hell of a career. We are going to miss him for sure. But yeah, I do think whether you get a new quarterback, whether it's Drake Lindsay, whether Ethan takes a step, I do think there are better days for Minnesota in general, right? Like this team battled injuries again, another year of that, and couldn't handle it this year. And you lost games in the Big Ten West that you should have won, plain and simple. And you're still going bowling, which is good, which is really important because the practice that your team gets and the young guys, like that is invaluable. That's why that's why we love it. And we get to see him play one more time, obviously, as fans. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it was a frustrating year. And this was kind of
I think for both teams, it was pretty frustrating. Like I think
but
Wisconsin fans, I think they thought Luke Fickell was plug and play. Like this offense is going to look
yeah,
different. Tanner Morgankai is an upgrade at quarterback. Turns out he's not. Grass isn't always greener. And what was a 7-5, and it was a bowl. Yeah, sure they made it to a bowl game, but I think Wisconsin and Minnesota fans genuinely thought that they could win the Big Ten West this year, and they all could.
rightfully so. Every year that should be the expectation. But like now it's obviously different this year. I do think like if you're Wisconsin, you lost to Washington State in Pullman, who was healthy and playing really good. We saw what they did this week to Washington, right? You lost to Iowa, fine. Everybody lose to Iowa in the Big Ten West. You lost to Ohio State, and you played them pretty darn tough, tougher than anybody not named Michigan did this year. I guess Notre Dame too. Um, Indiana, brutal loss, but you also had backup quarterback playing there. Northwestern, Big Ten Coach of the Year. Like it was a frustrating team, but I, among other people, is here. Like we were trying to calm down the expectation of this Wisconsin rebuild because that's what it was. It was a rebuild, and you were retooling the philosophy of your team, retooling positions, coaching staffs. Like I do think the future of Wisconsin is bright. It's going to be better than 7-5. It's going to be better, more pretty than it looks right now. Um, but you've seen like Luke Fickell has been a guy to come in. You know he can bring in talent. You know he can get high level transfers coming in. You know he can fill coaching staff. I do think the future is bright for you. Obviously, it was frustrating year, a little less bitter because you do have the axe, and that still means something for Wisconsin fans and Minnesota fans, obviously. Um, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
See you next year. I mean, it feels like both these teams return a lot of players. So it's going to be what are these coaching staffs doing to improve their play? Like what are they also doing in the transfer portal? How are they retaining their players as well? I think for Minnesota, it's really important you keep guys like Darius Taylor and Daniel Jackson happy in that situation because
Scott
you
Joyner?
lose you lose those guys. Wisconsin at the quarterback position, they clearly need an upgrade at quarterback. As is Minnesota, but I don't know what Minnesota's going to get necessarily. Um,
That's the thing is Wisconsin has the ability to go out and pluck a high level running back transfer because Braylon Allen's probably going to the NFL. I don't know if he has announced that
Chess
yet.
Malusi will be there, right?
I feel like he's an old sack. He's a senior. I don't know how many years he's played. 5 years. I think this was his last year of eligibility. I guess yeah, he played more than 4 games. He can apply for a waiver, I'm sure, but we'll see.
Maybe.
Regardless, though, like that. My point is that Wisconsin can replenish guys. Like you lose Graham Mertz, fine, whatever. Like he was bad at Wisconsin, but like you plug and play with Tanner Mordecai. Minnesota that program right as it takes right now, like they do not have the ability to do that, right, with most positions.
I agree. But no more Big Ten West. This was Minnesota and Wisconsin's last Big Ten West game. So we'll see
It's a
what the future of
tragedy.
the Big Ten looks like in the new Big Ten. In the new Big Ten. Let's talk American. UTSA at Tulane. Tulane favored by 3.5. We were both on UTSA. I did take Tulane to win straight up. Thought I could middle that. Frank Harris did not play well, but neither did Michael Pratt. Difference in the game. Tulane ran the ball very effectively. They controlled the game. They didn't turn the ball over. That was it. I don't know why UTSA had Oscar Cardenas throwing the ball on that one interception. Um, I mean, I love Oscar Cardenas, guy with 2 offers out of high school, just Air Force and UTSA. Been a nice tight end for him. Um, had him on my fair
Senior.
share of college fantasy football teams. But yeah, I think this is just a Willie Fritz just outcoached Jeff Traylor in this game. I think or their staff outcoached their staff. So Frank Harris did not look good. And what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And Tulane realized like Michael Pratt didn't play well, but he didn't need to because he was effective in the red zone when he threw the ball. And then of course Nakai Hughes balled out for however many yards he had, put him over uh like what 1,200 yards for the season. So he's really good. I think Tulane's defensive front was awesome this game. I mean, Frank Harris was always on the move this game. He was on the move every single play because he could not handle the pressure. Is Tulane going to have that same effect against SMU in the championship? I don't know. SMU just got an offensive lineman back. He's been hurt all year. SMU's offensive lines look pretty good. They've been able to run the ball with multiple different running backs. Tulane's secondary's been questionable all year too. So now UTSA couldn't take advantage of it, right? Because maybe they weren't getting a lot of pressure on Frank Harris, but a team like SMU might be able to take advantage of that. So, but either way, Tulane, enjoy this win. Enjoy Willie Fritz while you have him. Just gonna say that. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's this year or next year, but he is gone soon. He is a very good coach. He is awesome.
yeah. UTSA also, like, you look at the stats, it was pretty even. Like, third down efficiency, both teams were good and not great. Um, UTSA actually ran the ball pretty efficiently per rush. Time of possession was pretty even. UTSA actually had more. It was the turnovers, right? You mentioned the interceptions, the fumbles. There were 3 for 6 on fourth down. Like, that's, I get it. Some of that was a catch up, fine, but like, you're not going to play a team like Tulane and win like that on the road. That's not going to happen. The good news there is, like, you watch this game and like UTSA did not look that much different than Tulane. I do think like there's talent at UTSA. Like, they obviously showed they can belong and play well at the top end of the American. And the future is bright there for them. Obviously, the goal number one is to keep draft trailer. But this is also a good job. Like, they will be able to fill somebody if does go. Like, that's the reality of a G5 program. Like, you're going to lose good head coaches. It's about replacing them and getting your program into a spot where you can hire a really good qualified candidate. You know.
Yeah, and what's nice at Tulane for the game next week, it is at Benson Field, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. You're gonna have 30,000 strong there. Can't wait to see that game. That's gonna be a really good game, and it will have New Year's Six implications for sure.
By the way, you're playing SMU, and I believe Preston Stone went out with injury,
Yes, he did.
and it's unknown if he's going to play.
Significant.
Tough. That could be tough. Obviously, if you're Tulane, you're never rooting for injuries, but that's the reality of it. Like, you're going to play a Preston Stone less SMU team, then obviously there's talent there at SMU, but it's going to be a good game. It's going to be a real good game for the Sun or for the AAC.
Let's talk Mountain West. San Jose State at UNLV. UNLV was favored by 2.5. We both took UNLV minus 2.5. But what do we say? San Jose State's been hot. We thought that there was a real good chance that San Jose State just absolutely pulls a fast one and blows his team out. And they were blowing them out. It was
They did.
27 to
It was
7.
a blowout. It got close late, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Kerry Robinson had a day. A day. Cordero had a day. So this UNLV front seven that I was kind of flaunting in the preview uh, got a little exposed. Kerry Robinson just kind of blew him up early. So unfortunately, though, I don't know. I don't know what to think because the tiebreaker, and we'll talk about this also in the Boys State Air Force. But San Jose State does get cut because the Mountain West tiebreaker is based on computer rankings, your total composite rankings based on a certain set of computer rankings that people come up with. And San Jose State is not ranked higher than UNLV or Boise State. And the reason probably being is because their out of conference was so tough. So where you played USC, you played Oregon State, and you played Toledo, and you probably didn't anticipate Toledo being the absolute wagon that they are in the MAC. But that's still that clearly is the best team in the MAC in terms of like actual resources that they have for their program. Like they're a good program perennially in the MAC. So it was a tough out of conference schedule, and they started off 1-5, and then they won their last 6 games. So This is going to be a team that I probably am going to take to win their bowl game. I don't know who they're going to play.
Whoever they do play, I would be a little bit nervous. A lot of
I'll
bit
be a
nervous
little,
because
little nervous. Now that defense is not spectacular by any means, but that offense is buzzing. Kerry Robinson, stud. Any thoughts on this game?
yeah, I will say you mentioned it though, like they ran the ball well, and that was huge. They got off to a great start, which is huge for them. Being able to run the ball, being able to keep UNLV, out of what they want to do as well. They jumped on them. It was 20-7. They scored on the first 4 possessions. They even got a turnover next play. They had a chance to really put the hammer down. They didn't. But they continued to add on scores in the second half, in the fourth quarter, and they did enough. And obviously UNLV had the ball with a chance to win it at the end there, but it would have been pretty damn impressive drive there to go, 80 yards in about 50 seconds. But
That would
yeah,
have
it's
been
a shame that they don't.
a masterful comeback by Barry Odom.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's
Now,
a shame they don't get to play for a title, because they obviously deserve it. But at the same time, like UNLV deserves it as well. Boise State
yeah,
obviously get there as well, but it's a shame.
it's a shame, and it's crazy that we'll talk about it when we talk about Boise State Air Force. If you're watching this video as a cut up, we do have a cut up. We will have a cut up of the Boise State Air Force game that we also covered, and they're coachless right now, and they're going to be competing for a Mountain West championship. That
Yeah,
is crazy, wild. So this was a good game though. Well, late. If you were only watched this in the first half, you were probably a little disappointed. So, but yeah, let's move on. Air Force at Boise State, like we were just talking about. Boise State wins 27-19. Air Force eliminated from Mountain West Championship contention. Boise State gets the nod without Andy Avalos. Spencer Danielson, the defensive coordinator that Boise State fans wanted out of there so bad, is now leading this Broncos team to a potential Mountain West championship. Taylor Green playing this game. I know every time we cover Air Force, I always have the Zach Larry picture up there. He's not playing this game once again, which ended up being pretty costly. So the line was -7. You took Boise State. You covered. I took Air Force. Did not. And didn't cover because of an unfortunate missed 2-point conversion. What are you going to do? So, and also the over, having scored 43 points and having the over 46 on Dawson Steiner, and it didn't hit, it's pretty brutal. And Boise State kicked that field goal pretty early in the fourth quarter too to make it 46. I'm like, all right, let's see what we can do here. And then it ended up pushing. So bummer there. But what are you gonna do? So this was a good game. This was a good game.
it was. I do think Taylor Green played well. I mean, the 2 interceptions were tough, but they didn't really bite you too much. You minimize that damage. He was 13-17.
Well,
He,
one of them was in the red
obviously,
zone. One of them was bad. One of them was in the red zone.
well, yeah, but like talking about like points off turnovers, um, they ran the ball well with Janty and Holani, and then
It's
Janty
nice to
obviously had
see
the
like
75-yard
it's nice to see
scamper.
the 1-2 punch fully healthy because neither of them have been healthy all year. It's been one or
And
the other.
and Taylor Green he got his on the ground. He had a touchdown as well. This is like this is not like your Kellen Moore, even like your Hank Bachmar, like throwing around the rock. Like this is not that aired out Boise State team. This is we're gonna ground and pound. We're gonna run the Taylor Green, give him easy throws, get him settled in the game, and play good defense. And obviously with the interim head coach being a defensive coordinator, that plays to his strengths for sure. I'm sure he enjoys that. Keep it simple for everybody. If I was them, I would be terrified to play San Jose State. And obviously they're playing a pretty darn good team in UNLV as well. This is a different San Jose State team than they played early in the season, right? Like they won by 8 points against them, whatever at home. This San
Well,
Jose State
well,
team is humming right
they're
now.
not they're not playing San Jose State.
I know that's my point. I'm like they kind of dodged
Oh,
the bullet there.
you think okay, all right. I I don't know. I think this UNLV team could be a
It's
pretty good
also really
matchup.
good. Oh yeah, and I'm not gonna debate that as at all. But like my point is like San Jose State's humming. I don't think anybody in the Mountain West wants to play them. And but they get UNLV, and that's what actually matters. And they're playing next week for the Mountain West title, and that's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome for both these programs.
Yeah. So look, Taylor Green finally back. I hope he breaks out, man. I was the leader of the Taylor Green fan train, and it did not cash this year at all. But man, I think he's so talented. And if you have a backfield with him, Halani, and Janty in it at the same time, that is how do you stop that?
Ridiculous.
Who's the ball going to? It doesn't matter, and you don't know. So I don't know. But yeah, you're right. This is a different Boise State team than we've seen. The deal ground and pound. Now they have the classic running backs, right? The guys like Jai, Doug Martin, right? They got their
Mm.
running back, right? Those are classics. But the difference is the athlete that they have a quarterback potentially with Jalen Green or Taylor Green. Sorry.
As for Air Force, so real quick about them. I mean, it's a brutal finish. This is a team that was humming the first 8 games of the year, and obviously lose the Army in a fluke game. Layer goes down, season kind of falls apart. Lose a game against UNLV you probably shouldn't have lost. Or you probably could have won that game. Lose to a pretty bad Hawaii team. I don't know. I mean, it's frustrating. It was right there for you, the Mountain West, and obviously come up short. But at the end of the day, it is what it is there for you. It's hard to overcome an injury like Larrier, especially with that triple option offense.
Let's talk some CUSA. Jacksonville State traveling to New Mexico State. Line was +2. The Aggies beat the Gamecocks 20-17 in the fourth quarter scare where the Gamecocks almost came back and won that game. The Aggies win 10 games. They won 10 games. The Gamecocks won 8, by the way, and this is their first year in the FBS. But like, we're talking about New Mexico State won 10 games. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And the
It
takeaway that I have from this game as well, when I was going back and watching this game, is that both of these coaches might not be at these schools next year. And the thing is, too, it's like there isn't a job that either one of these two coaches wouldn't be able to take or thrive in, right? Because look, Jerry Kelly's coached at Rutgers, Virginia Tech on the East Coast. He's grew up in the Midwest, coached at Minnesota. He's also in the Southwest of New Mexico State. He was at TCU for a little bit. So there's plenty of jobs open, like for these Boise State, Duke, Indiana. I think Indiana would be like a great fit for Jerry Kill for sure. Staying in that Midwest, where I mean he grew up in Kansas, so it's a little different than Indiana. But Oregon State would be an interesting hire. San Diego State, I think, could use a guy like Jerry Kill, and then Rich Rod. Rich Rod is the guy who's coached everywhere else: West Virginia, Michigan, Arizona. I mean, he's been all over the place, and so at some of these bigger schools, it hasn't always worked out. But you're telling me a school like Syracuse couldn't use Rich Rodriguez, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's all I'm saying. I think both these coaches might be gone next year.
I know, which is tough to see for these fan bases because this year has been so successful. And for Jack State, like, yeah, you lost. You're still going to bowl game. Like, so it worked out in the end for you guys, in terms of being bowl eligible because of the lack of 6-6 teams. So you get in there, get chances to make some money for a conference and be on a national spotlight, which you guys absolutely deserve. I thought Zion Webb, he is what he is as a quarterback. I mean, he's fun at times, old guy, he's kind of been hurt, I feel like, in just about every game he goes in. But you couldn't run the ball today. Or I'm sorry, on Saturday, and like that hurt you. And when you're team at them, when they love to go up tempo, they love to run the ball and get slashes and chunk plays in the run game, it hurts. But also, like when you go down, 14 nothing, 17-3, it gets to the fourth quarter. I mean, you kind of have to play catch up there, which is tough. Diego Pavlova, man, continues to produce. Yeah, the 2 picks, whatever. 269 through the air, another 68 on the ground. He is so awesome. He is just so, so awesome.
For how much he struggled at the beginning of the year, it's impressive to see him on the comeback, winning 10 games.
look at their schedule. I mean, yes, they beat Auburn, right? They beat a good Jacksonville State team. They lost
They
to
could have gone undefeated,
Hawaii.
by the way. They could have gone undefeated.
Well, yeah, Liberty is probably significantly better than them. But regardless, like
But they'll get a
Massachusetts,
rematch, so we'll see.
they could. Yeah. UMass is terrible, and so is Hawaii. And you lost to both those teams in the beginning of the season. I mean, come on. September and early October got them, but they've been playing great football. And I love it for them. I love it for both these teams. We covered a good amount of both these teams actually, um, which has been super awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's this is a good game. I mean, obviously, like not super available to watch. I think it was ESPN Plus, which is a shame. The Mountain West has to fix. I'm sorry, the CUSA has to fix that. But
I
yeah,
mean,
Liberty next week is awesome.
what do they put this game on though? It's like it's tough. It's a tough spot the CUSA's put it in the Sun Belt for that matter, and the Mountain West. It's tough.
You'd hope
They're
that
in a tough spot.
with the Pac-12, kind of changing over there, like there's open spots to be had, and you'd hope that like a G5
It's true.
would be able to snag them.
So
So we'll
I'd like to
see.
see, yeah, that I'd like to see more G5 schools on national television for sure. All right, upset meter recap. We'll make this quick because this episode has been very, very long. All right, Arizona dominated. No Fafita threw for over 500 yards, school record. Okay, we had them very low, mild, so not surprised that they won. Texas was our next lowest one that we had on the upset meter. They dominated Texas Tech. They look like they're buzzing at the right time. Quinn Ewers finally getting in stride. The next mild one we had was Washington. That was turned out to be steamy. That was turned out to
Really,
be
really
steamy.
steamy.
Apple Cup chaos almost happened. That was a brilliant field goal at the end there. An absolute ballsy call in the end around. Oh my! If Washington State had made a big play, tackle for loss, and they get the ball in the 50 with like 25 seconds left. Oh my gosh,
And word, he's scoring there.
Kalen DeBoer might have been crucified because that would blow their playoff chances completely, no matter if they beat Oregon or not. So, but good teams win, I guess. So, but great teams cover, and they did not do that. So, and then the last game that we talked about being an upset, Kansas State. We said that was a high, mild, potentially sweating situation, and it was more than sweating. Rocco Becht finding a way. Iowa State won 7 games, by the way. How about that?
Sixth in conference too. 6-3 in conference. Same record
Six
as
round.
Kansas State.
Yep. So we ended up cashing on that upset meter, which put us at 7 out of 36 on the year, which is hovering around 19.4. I mean, if you really want to be generous, you could round it up to 20. But and again, these odds on average for upset meter, they're all over 10, right? And they've averaged to be about 13, 12 and a half, 13. Those inherent odds, if you're actually playing it by the book, are about 14%. So the fact we're hitting at 19, 20% is pretty good. So uh generally if you have an upset meter, like weak, like generally, like statistically, none of these teams should be upset. But every once in a while, we catch one. So it's good to catch one this week. It was also nice to
Yeah,
talk
that,
about
that
these
game
games.
that game was wild, real quick. Kansas State and Iowa State. First of all, the snow of Farmageddon was awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And if you
Love
look at the box
Farmageddon.
score here, I want you to go to the team stats. Okay. Kansas State, they lost by 7 at home. They had 42 minutes of time of possession. That is incredible. 42 to 17 or 17 and some change. It was crazy. They didn't really lose a turnover battle. They actually won the turnover battle. It was just explosive plays. Jalen Noel had a big one at the end there. Abu Sama, the true freshman, continues to break out. He had 3 big touchdowns. Rocco Beck had a big one. I mean, or another one to Jaden Higgins. I mean, it's wild. I mean, like, it is incredible. It was sometimes that's how college football works, where like you lose like 6 plays, you give up 6 big plays, and like You lose focus, one safety slips, or you miss a tackle, and boom, they're gone. Especially in the snow, it's hard to make tackles. Margins are super thin.
I agree 100%. Thank you guys for tuning in to our Week 13 recap. It is a bummer that the regular season is over, but we appreciate you guys being a part of it. And if you've made it this far, the least you can do is throw us a like. If you're going to be here around more often, might as well throw us a subscription. We love the way this channel is growing. We're going to have a ton of off-season content, right? From coaching carousel, transfer portal, recruiting. I mean, there is no off-season. We know that. Like, college football is 12 months out of the year. It really is. I love that about the sport. So, but yeah, I'm excited for conference championships. I'm excited for bowl games. And we'll keep you guys updated. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at the Redshirt Soft. Send us an email if you have any questions at the redshirtsophomore@gmail.com. And CD, do you have anything else?
No, just do what he says. And yeah, we'll see you guys. We got conference championship week. One more week. One more week.
Yeah, we'll be back Thursday. Absolutely. So, and we will see you guys in the next one.